Welcome back, everybody, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Lorenzo Phan here, sitting with
Kevin Hord.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, Lorenzo. You are a very polite individual.
Of course. It's good to just check in on you. Today we will be talking about the Clone Wars this time. Voyage of Temptation. This is Season 2, Episode 13.
Yes, sir.
Aired on February 5th, 2010.
1.21 million viewers.
Very nice.
This is the 44th story in the Clone Wars series. I would like to point out that the production number on this is 121. So it looks like this was produced potentially towards the end of Season 1 and is airing in the middle of Season 2. And I bring that up because I feel like we're going to maybe be able to tell that is a thing, and or maybe not.
Interesting. Okay. We'll keep an eye out for that. Director of this episode is Brian Kalin O'Connell.
Yes, sir.
The writer is Paul Dini with Henry Gilroy, which I find really interesting because Paul Dini. Do you know anything about Paul Dini?
I do not, but I do know that Henry Gilroy, I think, is... I don't know if he was earlier, but I think he's credited as like a series writer or like a supervising writer or something like that. So that's why his name pops up so much. So it kind of depends on where you're pulling that information from. If it's from like the credits at the end of the episode or IMDb or Wikipedia.
Interesting.
He will or will not be credited. But Paul Dini
showing up, yeah. So the even more interesting than if Paul Dini is the head writer because he was one of the major architects of Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, okay.
That aired early in the '90s. So a lot of what Batman transformed into what we know of as currently happened through the '90s, and the animated series is a big part of that.
Cool.
So yeah, Paul Dini, I respect and admire for just his part in that.
Yeah. So he created Christian Bale, then, is what you're saying? Or
essentially,
or Ben Affleck. Who did he make?
Both. I mean, look, because like from that show, and I don't know how minuscule it gets. I've never quite looked into it beyond that, but. Or like off the top of my head, I don't know it. If there's a good chance I have looked it up and it just fell out of my brain. But like that show introduced Harley Quinn overall. Harley Quinn was not a comic book character. She was created for the show and was so popular that the comics adopted her, right?
Okay, awesome.
The backstory that we know of for Mr. Freeze with the having his wife have cancer and stuff, that was all introduced via that show, not from the comics.
Not from the Terminator?
Nope, not from the Terminator. Yeah, unfortunately the animated series didn't give us any cool one-liners like, what killed the dinosaurs?
The Ice Age!
So stupid.
The name is Freeze. Learn it well, for 'tis the chilling harbinger of your doom.
So ridiculous. All the same, we are able to recite those lines.
I really enjoy that movie.
I like the movie from a weird, bizarre nostalgia factor as a thing that exists. Looking back at that version of Bane
movie, but
right.
I enjoy the movie.
That you enjoy, yeah. I agree with you there. We kind of always forget that Bane was done in the movies by the time Nolan got to it.
Yeah, so that would have came out when I was in like probably my freshman year of high school. So all you people out there that want to do that math, feel free, or you can just ask me and I'll tell you exactly how old I am and when I was born, whatever. But yeah, freshman year of high school, and Taco Bell had like a promotion where it was like one of those like peel and win things. So think that was the beginning of my obsession with Taco Bell. And, because, you had to have, like, all the peel and keep character faces. I don't even know what the fucking deal is with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you could win. Another fucking Pepsi or something.
Right.
But I definitely saw that movie in theaters at the mall with a bunch of friends of mine. And I think they all hated it. And I thought that it was, like, super awesome as a young lad. And I do watch it from time to time, every year or so. And, yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I can't help you there. I haven't seen that one in a while. The one I do have actual fondness for is Batman Forever.
Yep.
That's the one I really, really enjoy. That one and Batman Returns, I just like the craziness of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman.
She is very good.
Yeah, I miss that we've never had a crazy version of Catwoman ever again. All the other ones are like cunning, smart sleuths, that are trying to toy with Batman.
I mean,
whereas
Halle Berry's Catwoman was pretty crazy, but not in
a good way. Yeah,
no.
Halle Berry could play basketball. Her Catwoman.
Yeah.
That was all I got out of that one.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So, Paul Dini is a big part of the current mythology of Batman that we have.
Awesome.
Of course, there's been like New 52 stuff and all of that. That's kind of rejiggered the Batman universe in the comics, but the Batman animated series needs to be credited for kind of laying the foundation for comic book properties and also kind of considering what this show is about, in which that we are watching what is at surface level a children's show, but that we take 2 hours to digest like a 22-minute episode.
Right.
A show like Batman the Animated Series is a big part of just an older generation creating a show for a younger generation without dumbing it down in any way,
mm-hmm.
or allowing the idea that children would be able to understand the idea of Mr. Freeze and grief, right?
Okay.
And how that could play into certain aspects. So, whereas we still deal with animated things that, come out and just is a fart joke every other minute sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm curious about what drew Paul Dini here, or if somebody requested of him, or if he went to them. I'm sure he's also a Star Wars fan, but yeah,
I don't know.
I saw that name.
Maybe he and Mark Hamill were hanging out on.
That is true. Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah, there is that connection
and
as well.
Mark
yeah.
said, later down the road, 18 years from now, maybe there will be like an animated show and. For Star Wars, and if so, you should try to be a part of that.
You can have a hand in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, beyond that, let's get into the episode proper, shall we?
For sure.
Yeah, starting with the fortune cookie for this episode.
Fear not for the future, weep not for the past.
Yeah.
Who you got on?
I'm not gonna lie.
Who you got on this one?
I didn't think about this one. This one feels like a Yoda-ism.
Okay.
But
I don't know. I'm kind of making like a direct correlation with Satine here.
I see that. That's right. Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know that we know her character well enough prior to this episode, but I feel like that's kind of the direction that the feeling of this quote should be going.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's...
Although there is some dialogue that Obi-Wan and Anakin have during this episode that I could totally see this being on the Obi-Wan side of the conversation. So I will say either one of those two, Obi-Wan or Satine. And seeing as we know more about Obi-Wan, maybe I'll just lean heavier into that.
I'll go with that. I agree with that.
Cool. Obi-Wan Kenobi it is.
Yeah. So in our newsreel for this one, we get basically a wrap-up of the Mandalore plot, talking more about Separatists and reintroducing Satine and Mandalorians and their neutrality and all that goodness.
Yeah, I've got a one-line synopsis, and it says it's a straight recap of the Mandalore plot.
Yep.
So
then we get the information that they are traveling to the Senate. Again, still a rehash of what was happening at the end of the Mandalore plot. And basically the Jedi are preparing a defense just in case sort of thing as per protection. So we cut to Obi-Wan and Anakin briefing the clone troopers about the situation. Basically just protects the scene. Nothing really beyond that, right?
Doesn't Obi-Wan just like kind of straight call out like there's an assassination plot and we need to make sure it doesn't happen?
Mm-hmm. Basically.
So do you know where he got his information from? Like how do they know there's an assassination plot? Because this
is it just further information from the bombing attempt from the Mandalore plot?
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
Like there was an attempt on her life already, and because they were unsuccessful,
there's potential for gotcha.
Right.
That makes sense. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So they're basically told to look out for suspicious activity. Even R2 is told to look out for suspicious droid activity. Which I found funny. Obi-Wan and Anakin are then called to meet the Duchess, and as they're making their way, Anakin notices that Obi-Wan's a little tense. He's got a little anxiety about him. So he kind of brings up, he's like, hey, were you and Satine, do you guys know each other? Like, what's going on here?
You guys have a past together? Like,
right.
Like, tell me what's going on, so you know.
Especially Obi-Wan, who's usually the calm, cool, collected one. So
this is kind of like the reverse of the two of them in Attack of the Clones, like riding the elevator up to meet Padme, right?
Padme, yes.
Where Anakin was like all sweaty and like nervous and adjusting his tunic and shit, and like this is what Obi-Wan is doing here.
Yes. And right off the bat, I will mention it here. Because it is noticeable here, and I'll bring it up throughout the episode here and there. But the animation in this episode is particularly strong because a lot of the acting does not depend on the voice actors for this episode. There's a lot that is expressed in the facial expressions of all characters involved, between Anakin, between Obi-Wan, with Satine. Those three in particular, especially, there's a lot that happens, but there's a lot of nonverbal stuff that happens with Obi-Wan especially that I find entertaining throughout this episode, and it's, you know, the animation might still be stiff, but just that we get these little quiet moments that are action driven, not explosive action, but just you know, body performances, right?
Yeah, the digital acting.
Right, yes.
I'm glad you brought that up because there was definitely a moment late in the episode. I think you probably know what I'm talking about, and we will totally get to that. So
honestly, there's a few other episodes or a few other instances I could highlight. So I'm you know, I have a suspicion, but I'm not sure which one you might be talking about. But let's move on. So Anakin and Obi-Wan go meet Satine, and we do get a little. Is it before we see him enter? We see Satine talking to some of the other neutral folks. There's like 6 leaders with them or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So Obi-Wan and Anakin are in the lift. Then we do cut to the clones briefly. They're like searching through some boxes or some shit in the cargo hold.
Right.
2 clones leave, and then we see like something kind of open this box and exit a crate. Right. Then we cut to what I wrote is we cut to breasts and martinis. There is a female droid server girl That's all that I can
Right.
say. And like you
Yeah.
cut immediately to a breast shot and a tray with a couple martinis on it.
It's definitely a shapely droid, shall we say?
She is voluptuous, shall we say?
Right.
It's weird because there's a couple overly augmented female characters in this episode, and it stands out because of camera placement or angle or pan or
Framing. Yeah.
It's kind of bizarre. So that's the way we start.
Right.
And these martinis are being delivered over to Satine, who oddly enough seems to be like laying in her bed with like she's like surrounded by a whole bunch of people though.
Yeah, she's kind of in like this weird like sideways laying prone position sort of thing.
She's laying in her bed like on her hip, propped up by
Right.
an arm.
Yeah, she's like in a bacchanal sort of pose, like
Yes.
just kind of lying on the side day bed.
Yes.
Grapes are about to be served to her, sort of thing, right? So
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
She introduces herself as like the spokesperson of 1,500 systems. Something like that.
Yeah, she basically reestablishes her neutrality.
Yes.
And her neutralness and how she's gonna neutrally remain neutral.
Yes.
So
this is where Obi-Wan walks in. Like she's talking and then Obi-Wan just walks in and interjects.
Right. Throws in a little quip, essentially. There's some good back and forth here, where Obi-Wan and Anakin both kind of reestablish their roles as peacekeepers, and Satine kind of brings up like, well, that's funny coming from you since you're a general, or Anakin says something like, we fight for peace, and Satine,
he says we're protectors, we fight for peace. Satine had called Obi-Wan, I think it's great, when he first comes in, she says, welcome to the half-truths and hyperbole known as Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's when they have this back and forth. You're totally correct. Anakin calls them protectors and says we fight for peace, and then she says something to the effect of
like amusing contradiction or something like that.
Yes, that sounds correct.
Something to that effect. It might might not be exactly right, but something like that.
Yep.
So Obi-Wan, basically the last word is Obi-Wan says that staying neutral might not be an option if people are trying to get at you. Right. So then from this point on, the ship jumps into hyperspace, and we cut back down to the cargo hold, which oddly does not have any external lighting whatsoever.
Is it odd though? I mean, later in the episode we find out that there's like a droid in charge of all this shit, right? Maybe the droid doesn't need light.
I feel like in every other cargo hold we've ever seen, though, there's always some sort of lighting that happens, right?
Okay.
Because like there still might be other people who need to unload or load up this ship, right? But that does bring up a good question. Does the underbelly of a plane have lights? There has to be, right?
I'm not sure.
Otherwise, how are they throwing shit in there? Anyways,
because the planes are loaded in the daytime.
Not always.
But
I mean, I took an 8 p.m. flight last night.
Yeah.
I didn't get there until like 6:30. So
I don't know. Maybe the throwers all have like headlamps on.
That's possible. Yeah. So
You
that's
know
kind
what,
of
though?
So
my dad worked for the airlines for like 40 years, and he started as a baggage handler. Contrary to Fight Club, not thrower,
right?
Baggage handler. So the next time he and I hang out, I will ask him what the lighting situation is in the storage area of a plane. And
the actual cargo section. Yes,
and
please.
the cargo hold.
Because now that's just more for personal curiosity more than anything.
I would imagine that there is some lighting, but it's probably not as well lit as the post office.
The main cabin?
Yeah.
Right.
Or the main
cabin. Like, I'm expecting, like, the light you get from your trunk. You know, like, I'm not expecting a lot of light, but just enough, you know, like lighting relative to a dark sidewalk in a metropolitan city, per se, you know, or like a suburb even, right? Like, not perfectly lit, but you can kind of mostly see the sidewalk.
Right.
If that relation makes sense, right?
Yes.
So, like, I don't need it perfectly 60-watt lit in every crevice and corner, but just enough to know where you're taking a step, you know?
Gotcha.
Right. So anyways, basically at this point, we have two clones.
Mm-hmm.
They are Red-Eye and Mixer.
Red-Eye, Mixer.
And they are both named in the episode at separate points. I don't think they're named here, but they do get named.
Yeah.
I did.
I remember
Mixer's
them...
named first. I wrote that down.
Okay. I just remember that I think at some point Cody's like, Red-Eye, Mixer, like calls them both out like name.
Mm-hmm. And so jumping ahead, they don't answer because at that point they get attacked by what we find out is an assassin probe.
Yeah, I call it a spider droid because it looks like a spider.
It looks like a giant spider. It has a bunch of red lights that form like a plethora of eyes, essentially.
So I'm thinking this is why Red-Eye is named Red-Eye. And we can
for the droid, or is it because it's a late night flight?
No, for the clone Red-Eye.
No, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah, because
is he named because he's the first attacked by the Red Eyes?
Yeah, so I think it's like unnamed clone, and then like attacked by the Red Eyes.
Just call him Red Eye.
Yeah, like just fucking call him Red Eye. Like, you know, the one attacked by the thing with red eyes, the spider droid.
Just
because they probably couldn't call it a spider droid because there already is a spider droid that is like an official droid in the Separatist army. Like, it's called a spider droid. And I believe it only has 4 legs and like a central ball in the middle. And they're tall. You see them on Geonosis. Way back in Attack of the Clones. So this thing is called an assassin probe and an assassin droid. It would have been nice to just call it like a spider droid, you know? 'Cause that's what it is. It's got 8 legs and a central body and a whole bunch of beady, glowy red eyes and doesn't have like the spider mandibles, right? So it's missing that. Yeah.
But it does still have like sharpness to the end of its legs that seem to be able. We don't see it per se, but it seems to be able to slice and dice.
Yes.
You know, or at least impale is another possibility.
And manipulate.
Yeah, there seems to be some dexterity to these. We'll get to that shortly here.
Correct.
So one other thing I would like to note, this is the first appearance of the assassin probe. I did look this up to make sure I didn't miss this droid in any other
in canon. This is
media.
This is the first.
So in canon, in release order, this is the first time you would have we would have ever seen an assassin probe.
Cool.
I think there was something listed above it in the Wikipedia when I took a look, so I don't know what that entails.
Okay.
But anyways, so like you said, Rex calls out to Obi-Wan saying that he's unable to find the 2 clones. There's another good little conversation here about the potential past that Obi-Wan might have had with Satine, and he's still kind of playing coy about it.
Yeah, because so that last scene where Obi-Wan and Satine were bantering, their shit starts to escalate. Orn Free-Taa gets in the middle of them, and he's like, whoa. Let's keep the politics till after dinner. Because he's a big, he's a big old fat guy, and he wants to eat. Right?
Right.
There's the joke. So Obi-Wan's like, fine. And Satine's like, fine. And Obi-Wan storms off. And so, obviously...
And that is another moment I do want to bring up. Anakin's facial expressions during this scene are fucking epic as well. Epic in their quick little subtle... Like, he gives... It's not like a full smile smirk. It's more of just like a inquisitive, like, what's going on here?
Like a gleeful anticipation smile.
Right. Yeah, so he kind of like does a side-eye action here where he's like looking between both Anakin and Satine that I found very well done and amusing. But carry on to what you were saying there.
So it's natural that when we cut back to Obi-Wan and Anakin, Anakin's like, so what's going on? Like, yeah, you guys knew each other, but there's obviously some more history. Fill me in. And I think the history that we get here is Obi-Wan saying that when he was Padawan under Qui-Gon, they were on Mandalore for a year, and Obi-Wan basically had to, or not had to, but was given the task of keeping Satine safe, right? Yep. And so he basically says they spent the year together, living hand to mouth, on the run every day, never knowing what the next day would bring. And Anakin says, ooh, sounds romantic. Obi-Wan's like, no, it wasn't romantic, but you have no idea.
Right. They do bring up Yoda and his teachings of not forming attachments here, which I thought was a good little touch.
Oh yeah, especially what's Anakin say? He says, like, obviously you had feelings for her, didn't that?
Right.
Didn't that taint your judgment? Because Anakin or Obi-Wan says, you know, like when the mission was over, like he had to leave, like he had to do his Jedi thing,
because he lives by the Jedi code, and that took precedent overall.
And Obi-Wan does bring up the fact that, or I guess Anakin's like, is this why Yoda preaches like no attachments? And Obi-Wan's like, yes, but he always leaves out the sentiment.
There's no room for remorse. Yeah.
Yeah. He always leaves out the part about remorse.
Mm-hmm. Which I thought this was a nice, you know, this was approached well, you know, like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a step above subtlety, but it's not heavy-handed either. So I thought there was a good mix here, especially since this is a conversation being held with Anakin, of all people, too. I thought the way Anakin also held this conversation was done delicately, considering what we know about Anakin and what Anakin has, in fact, done, right? And even what we have seen earlier in the season with Anakin and perhaps other relationships, should we call them, right?
Yeah, I thought it was... I thought it was really well done, because not only is Anakin, like, kind of prying for some information to see, you know, like, what exactly Obi-Wan has done that maybe on the fringe of acceptability with the Jedi Order, but he also has like legitimate fascination and concern with where his master has been in the past,
right?
And like what is going on. So,
and it's a good moment that allows Anakin to finally kind of see that Obi-Wan is in fact human, and you know he goes through his own troubles, and he has had to deal with stuff rather than just always kind of being this cool master, right?
And I think he's also searching for maybe some, not justification, but what's the word I'm looking for here, Lorenzo? Like he's...
Are you talking like maybe, like, to me, Anakin's maybe trying to find some wiggle room or room for allowance to maybe...
Like, oh, well, like, Obi-Wan had feelings for a girl and was in a relationship, so, like, he's justifying his action. So maybe justification is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, that's basically what I'm seeing as well. I agree with you there that Anakin is just trying to be at peace with his own situation, because he's essentially still living like a lie to the Jedi Order.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So we do jump back and forth between plot A, plot B here. And plot A is all the stuff that's happening. We'll say that it's the top plot upstairs, right?
Yep. Upstairs, downstairs.
And then plot B is downstairs. And plot B is a bunch of boxes and no lights and clones wandering around. So
getting attacked by not spider probes.
Yes. As Lorenzo said earlier, Rex calls out to Obi-Wan. He calms him. He's like, hey, fucking Anakin's droid's like going nutso down here. Like something's wrong. So Obi-Wan says, oh, yeah, I'm on the way. And Anakin's like, no, Master, I got it. He's like, yeah. Like, undertone here. Like, I'll go get this taken care of. You go hang out with Satine and, like, work out your frustrations or whatever, you know, work out your little love tiff.
Right.
I got the bad guys. Right. What I thought was odd is Anakin gets downstairs. So Obi-Wan goes to dinner. That's cool. Anakin gets downstairs. Up until this point, we have had a lot of evidence that not only Anakin, but sometimes the clones can understand droids, right?
Yes, yeah.
So the fact that like R2's not spilling any information, is this just because R2 is kind of like an analog for like a scared little kid right now? Because like when Anakin shows up, R2's like, ooh, beepity beepity boop boop bee. And Anakin's like, all right, calm down, like I'm here now. You know, it's going to be okay. Start checking with your sensors if you think something's wrong. And R2 rolls straight over to these two crates that are open. Right. But the clones were like, oh gosh, we're just dumb soldiers and don't know anything. And this droid's just going bonkers. It was a little off of the behavior that we normally see from the clones interacting with R2-D2, specifically R2 and Rex, right?
Yeah. What I'm thinking here is, like, if we had to put words to R2, like, kind of what I'm getting is, like, R2 is like, there's definitely something wrong. There's something wrong. There's definitely something wrong. And Rex is like, okay, like, we get you freaked out, like, but let's figure it out. And then that's when Rex calls to Anakin and Obi-Wan, sort of thing. Okay. Right? Does that make sense? Where it's like,
it's not that R2 had seen something specific that he wanted to show somebody. Right. You know, it's not a Lassie like, what's that, Lassie? There's a crate that's open. Well, show me where the crate is. Gotcha.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, like R2 is like, no, there's something off here. Like definitely, like two troopers are missing, so definitely like we're not alone.
Like I got the robot heebie-jeebies here. And I saw a clone's helmet on the ground, but no clone. Right. And this isn't right. Like,
yeah. So that's exactly that's kind of how I that's the sense I got from that exchange between Rex and R2-D2.
I'm gonna throw in something real quick. We did have a just like brief like cutaway from both plot A, plot B to establish the bridge of the ship when it did fire off to hyperspace, and this is legit like the bridge of like some old colonial vessel, and like the captain is standing behind like a pirate ship wheel and has like a tri-pointed hat on, and
he's essentially a Star Wars Captain Crunch.
Yes. And so everybody in the kind of like the officers of this ship are dressed in a more traditional colonial Navy guard sailor type uniform.
Is that a Mandalorian thing, or is this just the ship that they happen to be on?
I'm not really sure, and I was hoping to be able to look up this ship specifically, which is the Coronet, right? Because visually from the outside, it really reminded me of the ship that Kira takes at the end of Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Right, yeah.
They're kind of same in shape, I guess, where it's like like an elongated.
It's taller.
It's tall. Yeah. It's not real wide, and it's got like a bigger. I don't want to say bulge at the top because that just sounds weird, but
well, it looks like a short like cruise ship that has a long stick at the end.
Yes.
On the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you chopped off like the bottom, like 3/4 of this thing, it would just look like a kid's toy of a cruise ship.
Right.
Yeah, but it's
with like a giant keel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I saw it.
Wide.
Or even long.
Deep.
Yeah.
Long. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Long is probably the best word there. Yeah. So
yes.
R2 and Anakin find these open crates. So Anakin divides up the team, and this is when is it here where he's like, Red Eye, Waxer, or Mixer, you go that way, we'll go this way. I'm gonna call Obi-Wan.
Maybe.
Yeah. So Red Eye hasn't been attacked yet.
Mm-hmm.
Anakin calls up to Obi-Wan, who excuses himself from the table by essentially standing up and just turning around, and then I guess nobody can hear his comm anymore. So there's some drama going on up there. And Anakin says, you deal with that shit, we'll deal with this shit. Just wanted to let you know I got 2 men unaccounted for. So Obi-Wan's like, oh, well, I'm going to stay with the senators because they're, aside from just Satine, the Duchess of Mandalore, there are 4 senators on board. So Obi-Wan is going to protect them, and they're going to eat dinner, so they're having fried Nuna legs.
Yes.
Do you remember when we saw the Nunas before?
No, not off the top of my head.
They are essentially space chickens from Naboo.
Ew.
And when we saw them before, we definitely called them space chickens. We saw them in the swamps. The Gungan General is when they were first mentioned. And then in the Deserter, they were in that episode as well. And so I looked up the Nunas at that time, and I was like, man, because they're in like 12 different episodes of the Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. And most of them are leg only or food or mentioned as food. So it's like the Clone Wars established this space chicken in a couple of episodes, and then after that, they're just eaten pretty much.
Yeah. Yep.
So Orn Frita is very excited about fried Nuna legs, and it looks like, just fried drumsticks. So
yep.
Good for him. Once we cut back down to plot B, Anakin, or I guess this is when Red Eye gets attacked by this giant spider thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happens? Then Anakin is searching for him and comes up upon Red Eye, who is being like marionetted by the spider droid, which is like the coolest fucking thing. Because not only did this spider droid like take out this clone, but then he's going to like pantomime that the clone is moving before like revealing himself, like trying to draw in more prey, right? Mm-hmm. Which was super cool. Anakin tries to strike him down with his lightsaber because he gets attacked by the spider droid. He falls down, goes boom. Kind of throws his arm up like, no, don't attack me, and then the clones rush in and save his ass, right?
The assassin probe tosses Red Eye at Anakin, which I thought was funny, because they're definitely like looking at him like, Red Eye, are you okay? And they just get tossed, and then Anakin misses that first toss, strikes at the assassin probe, but then I think a box is what takes him down. Like another box gets tossed his way.
That sounds right.
Yeah, so
they take out the first assassin droid, and then somehow I guess they just know there's like another one. I'm guessing because initially we saw more than one box open, right? More than one crate.
Yeah, there's a couple empty boxes.
So another of these assassin probes like scurries over to the
turbo lift, I believe.
Yes,
is what they refer to it as.
Mm-hmm. I think they just call it a lift, but that's what it is. A turbo lift.
Yes. Makes its way up the lift shaft.
Yep, it goes up to dinner.
Yep. So then Anakin gives Obi-Wan the warning that there are assassin probes, and that one is making its way to the dining area. Obi-Wan calls out and tells everybody, like, hey, man the lift, like, guard it. Then immediately, of course, the probe pops right out and starts fucking shit up, essentially.
It does its little spider droid scurry attack maneuvers.
Yeah.
And
Obi-Wan it jumps on the table and starts making its way towards Satine. Obi-Wan does cut off the front legs and then takes it down, right?
So he stabs it like in the main eye, right in the front of its face. Here's what bugs me about this. You know how Obi-Wan's got like that stance where it's like arm up over the head with his lightsaber and then like his fingers out like in a peace sign? Mm-hmm. Like he jumps in front of this thing, pops the pose, and then stabs it.
Right.
It's just super awkward because there's not a long enough time period for him to like hold the pose like he's guarding her. He like jumps in, does the pose, stabs the beast. It's very like Errol Flynnian in like hop in frame, do the thing, and then fight the villain.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's not the first time in the show we've seen the pose even though, right?
No, but before the pose has worked well, like
right. Because it's a build up to other action.
Because here there is like that pause, like this is my power stance where I can be prepared for what's coming, not like jump in, I'm Obi-Wan, look at me do the pose.
I like the idea though that the pose isn't a fighting stance to always start with, that it can lead into other things. That's kind of something I don't think we kind of get enough in terms of fighting styles of how the Jedi fight. Whether it's it depends on the Jedi, whether it's like a more fluid based fighting system where like one move flows into the other, or if it's like a stance one, like we see it with the Padawans, right? Like the thing's striking from left, so parry that way, and then like reset, and then parry right, reset, right? I kind of like the idea that even though, yes, it is visually awkward, because they try and frame him in the same way, and it's the frame that doesn't look right either. But I do like that it's a quick glance, he hops down, the pose comes out, and the pose is kind of there for him to kind of get momentum to jab the thing in the eye. That's the one thing I kind of appreciated about that, but I agree it could have been a lot smoother there.
If they could have elongated the pose for like a half a second, because it's like a quarter second, hop in, do the thing, do the stab.
Which is funny. I personally think it would have worked better if they had sped it up.
Really?
Like if it was just like he was hopping down and like his left hand was already kind of there. Like,
as he's coming in?
Yes.
That totally would have worked too. I'd be down for that.
It's because they kind of give him a pause to show off the pose.
Yeah.
But what they needed to do is just like, instead of having him go into the full pose we see from Revenge of the Sith, if his hand was kind of out, fingers were pointed, but like his other arm was kind of just like going into a swing for the stab, right?
Yeah. I'd be down for that. Like, I think either way.
Yeah.
Like, fluid motion into the attack as he's coming in to protect, or give him time to actually, like, set up in this thing. but not like
not
the way
like,
that it happened.
Yeah, just from like a fighting perspective, if there's a thing that's actively attacking, I feel like it's just asking to get mowed down. If in your fighting style it requires you to stop,
pause,
and assume,
set up.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, no, that probe's gonna kill you. So, anyways,
for sure.
Yeah. So, moving on. What happens after this? Where are we?
I think we cut back down to Anakin, maybe, and like the spider droids, the assassin probes. When you kill them, there's like a whole bunch of little holes in the top of the head type structure that open up, and a bunch of little tiny ones pop out.
Yep.
This is the thing.
I call them baby probes.
Yeah, they're like baby spiders. Because don't they say, like, if you kill a spider that's got like its little spider egg sac, like you stomp on it and you pick your foot up. Like, everybody's heard this story of like somebody that they know like killed a spider, and then when they like
everything else scatters.
And it's just like a flood of 10,000 babies. Same deal here. This is what happens.
Yeah.
I thought this was really awesome.
Yeah, that was cool. It was a cool design aspect. I can only imagine how that shit was manufactured, for sure.
Yeah.
But
I never
from
really
a design,
like that, but okay.
But from a design perspective, the fact that the probe itself is there to assassinate somebody, but it has its own like backup and defenses, I kind of dug.
Oh, like lots of backup.
Right. Because the probe, the baby probes definitely have bite to them, because it takes down a couple of clones really quickly. The manner in which that works isn't immediately clear from what we see. Like, we see a bunch of them swarming one of the clone troopers. The clone trooper kind of goes down, and that's all we get. It didn't seem to show that these baby probes were like piercing through the armor or anything like that.
And I don't think that they are. I think it's more of like a horror thing, like like 1,000 tarantulas running at you and just like scurrying over your body and like.
But one clone definitely stops moving. At the very least.
Maybe he passed out.
Maybe. I mean, I personally would have counted that as a death, but
I'm sure that I did as well.
Yeah. Okay. Just double checking. But yeah. So the actual mechanic of what the baby probes are doing, I'm still curious about. I was trying to figure out if one crawled into the helmet, maybe, and we're just not seeing something happening inside of the helmet, which is slight possibility.
That could be.
Yeah.
Or could have just like stuck them in the. They found like a
just right in the
soft
neck
bit
somewhere. Right.
Like they know the difference between hard bits and soft bits.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was figuring was happening. There's just some angle, like we're getting an angle that was not clear, and that's all. But either way, the clones are going down for a bit. So this is happening both downstairs and upstairs, where the baby probes are popping out.
It definitely creates some pandemonium. So we have two unlikely defenders, shall we say, against the actual defenders. And downstairs we have R2 kind of shooting some lightning shocks out there, electricity, whatever you want to call it. So he's zapping these things. And then upstairs we have Satine and Obi-Wan back to back, and she pulls out what looks like just like a mini blaster. It looks like the noisy cricket from
Men in Black.
And she's shooting these things, and Obi-Wan calls it like a... What's he call it? Like a neutralizer or something like that?
Something like that. I honestly
deactivator.
Yeah, deactivator sounds right.
Yeah. Something to that effect. And she says, I may be a pacifist, but that doesn't mean I won't defend myself.
So she's just taking out large swaths. Like, each shot kind of... it's like a shotgun blast of deactivation.
Yeah.
Where it kind of takes out like a certain radius of these little baby probes.
Yeah, it's like a shotgun taser in mini form.
Right. Yep, and R2D2 is kind of doing the same thing. Like every zap, kind of lightning bolts out into a array of other little mini lightning bolts that takes out a large swath at a time.
Yeah, they're definitely not like individualizing each little spider baby.
Right. Yeah. So with that, they are able to destroy all of the little baby probes, at least the ones that we are that are within immediate sight. So what do we got? So Anakin does request a manifest from the droid that is downstairs, because he does bring up that somebody would have had to smuggle those assassin probes on board.
Right. Somebody put these boxes here. These crates came from somewhere. So Annie's real quick to figure out, hey, who's in charge down here? And there's some droid, and the droid's first response is, did you guys kill all those little things? And he's like, yeah, but I need to, like, who's in charge? And he was like, oh yeah, that's me.
Right.
And so he checks the manifest, and it says, he's like, it says right here, it's just shipped this to Coruscant. It was labeled as medical supplies. And Annie's pissed because there's no record of who loaded said crates or who shipped them or like a receiving partner or anything like that. It's just these boxes are here and that's it. There's record of them being there, but there's no record of any details other than that. And the droid brings up that it's got the Senate seal, so it's basically no questions asked. Like, Senate seal, take it.
What I didn't... I watched this episode twice, and it was partly because we were planning on recording this episode a lot sooner than we actually ended up doing it. So I rewatched it, and I, upon initial viewing and rewatch, got the sense that the droid was involved.
Oh,
the foul play.
I totally did not.
Okay, because there's an explicit shot of the droid as it's pulling up the manifest. It kind of, again, in the non-verbal cues of this droid, it's because of the delay that the droid is kind of doing. It's like, well, it's me, I'm in charge. Then it goes over to like the computer console, and we get a very close-up shot of the droid's finger kind of swiping across the board a little bit.
I think he was probably trying to locate that specific package, right?
Okay.
Because there's a lot of fucking boxes down here. So he's got to find, like, the one that Anakin's looking for. And as far as, like, the did you kill those little things comment, I think that's a testament to, like, the pandemonium of everything that was fucking going on. Like, this thing is, like, knocked on its ass, you know, and then some Jedi runs up and is like, who's in charge? And he's like, did you kill those things? Like self-preservation mode, maybe? I don't know. So, yeah, I didn't get the feeling that this droid was in on it, because I feel like if he was, then he would have been, like, trying to, like, delete information off of the data pad, and Anakin would have had to, like, taken it from him instead of him, like, just, like, flipping through and, like, here you go. It says right there.
Yeah. So that's kind of what that's why I read it as the droid, because like when the data pad had no name on it, I thought the droid did something to make that happen in that moment, if that makes sense. But I agree. I might have been just kind of placing things that weren't there in this situation. So just moving on.
Anakin calls up to Obi-Wan and says, or I guess he doesn't call up. He, like, goes upstairs, checks on Obi-Wan and everybody, and he's like, everything good up here? And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, like, you know, or I've taken care of our little visitors, or some weird Obi-Wan saying like that, right? And Anakin's like, hey, I got some bad news. I'm pretty sure that one of these senators is in on this. This is why. And he, like, gives him the data pad and shows it to him. Like, here's my information to back up my claim. And Obi-Wan strokes his beard and he's like, I have a feeling this is correct as well.
Right.
Like, this is my theory also. And if I was Anakin, I'd be like, dude, it's not a fucking theory. Like, look here. Like, here's proof.
Right.
And you're like theorizing.
It's foul play. Foul play.
Like,
yeah.
You can just be like, great job, Anakin. You did some research and got some good info.
So it's right at this moment that they do spot there's one more baby probe making its way across the room. And Obi-Wan formulates a little plan to use it to find said traitor.
Yep.
He does mention that he formulates a plan to find the turncoat, which I feel like as a word is not used enough in English.
I think it matches the colonial design of the staff of this ship.
Absolutely. So I really enjoyed hearing that as just not it means what it means, and it's just not used often enough. So what Obi-Wan does do is he kind of puts the baby droid in a little platter with a clear cover over it. It's like a cake holder sort of thing on a platter.
It totally is.
And the droid is inside of this thing. And Obi-Wan mentions that he's going to use the droid to try and figure out who is the traitor and see who the droid takes a liking to. Satine objects this method as being borderline torture.
Yeah, borderline torture.
Yep.
Now, Orn Frita was all about this when he thought it was dessert.
Yeah, he was like, yes, dessert. And then he goes, no, I think I do not have the appetite for this, or something like that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so he walks around the table, and the probe assassin kind of lunges at potential targets, but gets stopped by the little glass covering.
Yeah, and so the senators here are Orn Frita, and this is Orn Frita is the big old fat Twi'lek.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's
the blue one. Yeah.
Yep. Then there's Anakin Far, who is a Rodian. We've met him before. That's Uncle Anno, according to Padme. And then there is Kin Rob, who is a dark-skinned human female senator. So Obi-Wan calls her out by name. This is the order that he goes. Orn Frita, Anakin Far, Kin Rob. And he says something like, ooh, this droid is this little assassin bug is very interested in the very fine female specimen Kin Rob, and she is again like super breasted,
right? Yes.
And it's just like these little things in this episode. I don't know why they're there, but there are 3 or 4 instances where it's like pointing out the female physique, either by framing or by like these little comments that are made. It's just a little bizarre. Did you notice this, or is this
No, she's definitely wearing an outfit that
I mean, I won't say it's the outfit because it does. Yeah,
but it's like they're. I hate to use this term, but I don't know what else to call it. But it's definitely part of the animation style of this show, and we've seen this with Padme, and we've seen this to some degree with Ahsoka. But here, because her bosom is more voluptuous, pronounced. Yeah, that's a good word. They're just bolted on, like.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're just more noticeable in a awkward way.
Mm-hmm. And we also have like Orn Frita is often accompanied by Twi'lek females. Mm-hmm. The Twi'lek females that he's accompanied by are like orange skinned, and then they're wearing like skin tight bodysuits that are like orange in color. Mm-hmm. So they might as well be nude, but they're not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It should be noted, but I don't know what else to say beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know how even like a casual viewer wouldn't be like, there's a couple of weird things here.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody likes the female figure. Okay.
It's just, well, it's one of those things, especially in animation, because literally everything is a choice.
Absolutely.
Literally, right? Where it's one thing to hire an actor to play Tomb Raider,
Right.
And Alicia Vikander, like that's just her body type, and that's just how it is, and that's what we're gonna do here, or just any of that, right?
As opposed to like the skin tight bodysuit that they put Angelina Jolie in.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. This is the difference.
Mm-hmm. So then, like with animation, it's not just hiring somebody who happens to have whatever body type they might have, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody designed this, they built it, they had to draw it, they had to build the wireframe, make the clothing approvals,
right,
and then animate it. You
right.
know? So that's why, like with certain things in animation, that's why here in the Clone Wars especially, we'll stop and kind of note some of these things, and especially regarding whatever episode that was so long ago with Padme. Like it's just one of those things where it's like every step of the way is the decision that has to be made, and it's like, yes, like there are steps that can be, there are corners that can be cut and stuff, but nonetheless, like somebody had to build all of this to put in this final episode.
Yep.
So, anyways, where does Obi-Wan go from this point out?
He circles around Satine over to Senator Tal Merrick. So we saw Senator Tal Merrick last episode, but we didn't know it was Senator Tal Merrick. I thought this was just like some assistant boy. He's not a boy. He's a grown-ass
dude.
Man.
Yeah. Dude bro.
I thought he was just an assistant dude bro of Satine. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I think we just called him like the assistant guy last week.
Yeah.
So he wasn't given a name. But he is Senator Tal Merrick, and as Obi-Wan's coming around, because he's like explaining his plan as he does this. He's doing a walk and talk and shaking the spider in a box in people's faces as he walks around the table in a jaunty little fashion, looking for the turncoat. And as he comes up to Merrick, he's like, oh yeah, this thing has taken quite a liking to you and doesn't seem to attack the glass or anything. And doesn't Merrick just like straight grab Satine and then slowly back out? He's like, you got a clever plan there, it worked.
He goes, something. Yeah, like he says, like, as he's saying, like, well, very clever, he lifts his left hand to slap the tray out of Obi-Wan's hand. The droid gets loose. Then he grabs Satine.
Yep.
Before we move a little further, I do want to talk about this interrogation scene.
Sure.
And I'm sure it's been done in other things, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But the movie reference that comes to mind is John Carpenter's remake of The Thing from 1982.
Okay.
And there's an interrogation scene in that definitely goes a lot farther than what happens here. And again, it's not a 1-to-1 correlation, but it's still close enough that it kind of brought my mind there. And I do wish that they drew this interrogation scene out a little bit more, because earlier in the episode there are a handful of attempts at jump scares. They are definitely TVY7 appropriate jump scares, where a clone is kind of like looking to the darkness and R2-D2 pops out, right? But then later on in the episode, another clone kind of turns a corner and then the assassin probe is there. So it was kind of annoying to me that I think the scene is as well done as possibly could be here, maybe under certain time constraints and stuff, but I just feel like the scene would have played a little bit better if it got drawn out a little bit more and there was more tension build up.
I'd be down for that.
Right. So, because that's something I think the Thing did really well, where there was a good mystery on who might have been invaded by an alien body, sort of thing.
Is this like the end scene, or is this? It's come up on the show before, but I've never seen the Thing. I do know what happens in the Thing.
So I will not spoil what happens in the scene, but they come to figure out that the alien invader is not down for heat, and that this applies to even the blood that drips from the alien itself. So then they draw blood and put them in the little petri dish from the remaining crew members, and Kurt Russell is holding like a hot stick of some sort, like it's like some sort of hot wire,
it's like a hot meat stick,
something like that. Yeah, so he's poking it into the different petri dishes, and with one of the petri dishes there is a negative reaction, and that's how they figure out who is invaded with internally by the Thing. So that's kind of what I got. Like, the scene is nearing that,
Sure.
It's definitely an allusion to that, if not a direct reference, such as the show has done.
I can feel the parallel, and
right.
I like it.
Right. So anyways, from this point on, Merrick takes Satine hostage, runs out of the room.
Obi-Wan calls down to Anakin, explaining what's going on upstairs. Anakin's like, I got my own problems, because I guess he's still looking for mini spiders or something.
There's still a few more roaming around, possibly, right?
Could be. This could have been eliminated because Anakin's already been upstairs. He wasn't on the search, so whatever. They could have used this time, like you said, to build a little more tension in that second dinner scene. I think it's weird, by the way, that they're like at dinner, get attacked by a monster, and then just like set the chairs back up, like, let's keep on eating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, like, to be fair, they're just kind of chilling. The only one that's expecting dessert is Ornfrita.
Oh yeah, he's like, let's get this dinner back on the road, and keeps on eating more fried Nuna legs. Right.
Everybody else is kind of just chilling there. So yeah. So anyways,
Rex gets attacked.
Yep.
Anakin kills that one with a lightsaber. So this marks assassin probe number 3. And then Rex hops up, jumps on, like, pins it down with his foot, and just fires off.
Shooting away.
He's got 2 blasters, dual blasters, boom, 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 boom. Keeps on going. Keeps firing and firing and firing until these things are dead. We cut to the bridge where Merrick walks in with Satine. Straight pulls a blaster and just murders everybody on the bridge.
Yep.
And
including the captain, who does have a quick little plea. It's like, please don't. And then, nope, goes down.
He also has a surly little mustache.
Yep.
This is the way this is shot, though. It's not just like, like an over-the-shoulder or like first-person shooter type deal. The camera angle is like from underneath the blaster, and the camera has to like pan back and forth, so it'll like quick pan over to like 2 guys, and then you see the blaster like from the top of the screen across, and it's nicely done. Like, it's not just Merrick walks in and you see him shoot from the door,
Right. Yeah.
Gives a little bit of...
And
personality to what's going on.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Like that little bit of camera movement was cool because it doesn't stay in the shot terribly long, but it's long enough that you see the confusion and hesitation in the crew where they're like, "Wait, what's happening?" And then they get shot.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah. So then, what does Merrick do? Merrick takes the ship out of hyperspace, right?
Drops him out of hyperspace. He calms who we know as Pre Vizsla. This character is not named. I don't think, right?
I don't think so. I didn't catch that. Yeah.
No, I know he's named in the credits, and it is Jon Favreau.
Okay.
But it's Jon Favreau's character from last episode. Pre Vizsla, like the big baddie of Death Watch. But in seeing this, if you were viewing this in isolation, this guy would have just drugged this princess lady into the cabin of the bridge of a pirate ship and killed a bunch of people, and then like called up some Mandalore guy, and he's like, "Hey, I got your prize," basically. And then the Mandalore guy's like, "Okay, I'll send an extraction team," right? So then we get those really cool, I don't even remember what we call them, the ships that have like the spiky thing where they like slam into the side and
like probe ships.
Yeah, I don't know, because we've seen them in a couple different iterations where they're like closed and they hit and they open, and then like droids come out, or they're open and they were like hunter ships at that point,
right?
And that was in the the Malevolence trilogy. They were hunting through the debris to like crack open escape pods.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. So we have more of those. There's like 4 or 5 of them. Hit the side of the coronet, and so that brings on some super battle droids, and we have some awesome fighting by Anakin, just whooping ass through some droids. Obi-Wan finds Satine, so Obi-Wan confronts them in the bridge. This is where we get the droid fight with Anakin. At this point, Obi-Wan, Merrick, and Satine are on what I called a hostage standoff.
Yep.
Merrick kind of slowly backs out of the bridge and down the hall, over to one of these like penetration ships.
Yeah.
We need to figure out what these things are called, but every time I think about it, then we don't see them for like 5 episodes, 10 episodes,
right? And
it doesn't matter. But I think what he's doing is he's going to use one of these ships to escape, I think is his plan. So they're at a standoff between the 3 of them. Merrick says that he has placed bombs on the engines, and then like he pulls out this little detonator thumb activated device thing, and says that, like, hey, I'll just fucking blow this place up. Everybody dies. Like, I don't have to take Satine back to Death Watch. Like, that's not necessary.
That's not the goal. Yeah.
Right. Either way, I'm still going to win. Like, kill me or not. Like, I'm prepared to die, or you. And then he pits Satine and Obi-Wan against each other in like this moral conundrum where Obi-Wan wants to kill him and Satine's like, no, don't kill him. Is she arguing not to kill him?
So the first thing I want to bring up is you kind of skipped over a little moment while Satine was still being held by Merrick. And they're backing their way out. Satine was like, hey, I think this might be the last time I see you, Obi-Wan. So while we're here, I do want to mention that I have loved you ever since the first time I saw you.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that confession.
I thought this was coming up. So, but yeah.
Nope. So this comes first. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
This comes first. there is this confession. There is more fun animation from the face of Merrick, who looks at Satine, and it's like, what are you saying, and why are you saying this, and who the fuck cares, sort of like coming from Merrick, right?
So this is the moment that I thought that you were talking about back at the beginning of this episode, because she confesses her love for Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan is kind of says something to the effect of, this isn't really the time to talk about this.
Right.
And she gives him this look, and then like everything just melts out of his face, and he's like, you are completely right.
Yeah.
And I would have left the Jedi Order for you, and I don't know what else that I can say.
Yeah.
And
so all three of them, I think, in this scene are really well done. In their own ways, like Merrick's face, if you go back and watch it a couple times, it's expressive but still wooden in animation. But I honestly think that's fine, just considering what this show is and the limitations of it, right?
Okay.
I got such a kick out of the visual storytelling that was happening between these three characters in this scene, and the fact that. Yeah, and the fact that Obi-Wan, to me, Obi-Wan didn't melt. It was more of like this isn't the best time. Oh, what the hell, sort of thing. Like that's kind of the sense I got out of Obi-Wan there. And again, it's just a subtle movement of his face, right? So with that said, that's when Satine like steps on Merrick's foot. Gets free, grabs a blaster.
Okay, yep.
That is when we get into the three-way hostage standoff. Then, so what? Getting back to where you were, Merrick presents a conundrum to both of them, in which, if Satine kills Merrick, then her neutrality and her argument of being a pacifist is contradicted by her killing. Then if Obi-Wan kills Merrick, then Satine can't love Obi-Wan, as he is therefore a killer as well, and she will have seen him kill. What I don't get about that point is that it's understood to be that Obi-Wan has surely killed somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a little weak.
Yeah, so I agree from the Obi-Wan stance that argument is not as strong, but I do find it compelling, the conundrum that Satine specifically finds herself in. She cannot be the one to shoot because of her strong political stance for pacifism.
So I think the argument that Obi-Wan not kill Merrick, I don't remember, because she says something to the effect of, Obi-Wan, don't make that choice, there are so many lives at stake. And is she saying, like, sacrifice me so that
she says
you can
that
save
while
everyone else? Yeah, she says this earlier.
She's saying
like,
that while, yeah. So yes, that's what she's saying. Like, don't let him get away, even if that means having to kill her to get through her to stab Merrick, per se, right?
Well, then she's totally okay with Obi-Wan taking him out.
Right,
so
absolutely.
That makes this argument even weaker.
Yes, I agree with you there. Like, it's because it's, even going back farther to the beginning of the episode, it's understood that she even picks fun of him being a general, right? She picks fun and pulls apart the idea of fighting for peace, you know?
Right.
So this is something that she is it's fully understood, and she has to some degree accepted that this is their role in the Clone Wars. So Obi-Wan is just pausing because I think it's more of an issue that that then it's explicit. It's explicitly known. It's explicitly seen.
Like he's murdering to save his love, right?
Right.
And that's compromising his morals for the end goal.
But what I still don't understand about that, though, is like at the end of the day, the dude is holding a button that could blow them all up. You know, like.
Yeah.
So, like, the justification is right there. There doesn't need to be any sort of like cover up motivation. Does that make sense?
I totally agree. And with the number of limbs that have been chopped off in Star Wars stories, surely he could just cut the dude off at the elbow or the wrist or something, or you know.
And and it all would have been fine. And like just force caught the button before it hits the ground, just in case, you know, sort of thing.
Right. You know, I think that Merrick is just like such a wordsmith that he's getting into their heads.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in this scene, because he even does like the villain like pause and like, if only, you know, and like slightly touches his lips.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then he straight gets stabbed in the back.
Yep. By Anakin.
Good old Annie is there. Like, who knows how long he's been there listening, just standing, chilling in the background. And
both Satine and Obi-Wan are surprised by this, and Anakin just kind of brushes it off as like, hey, he was going to kill us all. What were you guys doing?
He was going to blow up the ship.
Yeah, like, what were you guys waiting for? Yeah. Like, which I, again, enjoyed that moment. And having watched it a couple times, it's a very wooden shift, but the face that Merrick goes out on is it's not well done, but it's just done in a way that I just found funny. Maybe not for the right reasons. Like it's just,
you know, it's his death mask.
Right. It's just like the weird morbid humor in me that I enjoy.
There's another weird thing that happens like right after this. So Merrick is challenging them like, ooh, which one of you will kill me, because then one cannot love the other, and yada yada. And Anakin stabs him in the back, grabs the button switch operator deal, as you suggested that a Jedi should. Totally works out like that. Rex comes up, and then Obi-Wan and Satine kind of start talking to each other. Anakin does this thing where he like puts his hand up to the side of his face, like he's deliberately shielding his eyes from something, and like turns his head and looks away. And it's enough in the background that if you don't, I mean, I watched this episode several times, right? If you don't do that, you're not going to see it, but it's just it's a really weird choice for Anakin, as though he's deliberately like shielding his eye, like, I'm not gonna see this, like, Obi-Wan, you can do what you need to do and talk about what you need to talk about. Like, it's, I don't know, it's a weird thing. But at this point, then we just cut to Coruscant, right?
Yep. Ship arrives at Coruscant. They disembark the ship, I believe, correct? They get on a platform. They greet Sheev Palpatine.
Palpatine is there. A shit ton of people get off this ship and just kind of scatter around in different directions. Obi-Wan and Satine talk briefly about meeting again. And
more flirting happens.
Yeah, she's like, oh, well, you know, that may be a good idea, but I don't know about your beard.
Right.
Everyone's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, it covers up too much of your pretty face.
Right.
And walks off.
And then again, more facial animation. Obi-Wan kind of gets like a what's his face from Little Rascals, where he's like, aw, shucks.
Yeah.
Like, nah. And then,
And then, like, all of a sudden, Anakin's dumb again and doesn't know anything about their relationship. And he's like, oh, what was that all about? Like,
I think he's just messing with them. Like,
He was messing with him early in the episode when he was like, I'll get the assassin droids, you go protect your girlfriend.
Right.
And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, no, she's not my girlfriend. And like this would have been another time to do that, but the reaction doesn't fit the earlier joke. You know, like, what was that all about? Like, see, girlfriend, you know, like elbow him in the ribs or something.
You just wanted something a lot bigger, like
for sure,
like a more grandiose joke laid down. Yeah,
for sure.
I understand. But then Anakin and Obi-Wan are left there watching Satine get a speeder and getting out of there.
Yep.
And then this is when we cue loud music. Yeah.
Cue loud music. The two notes that I have as far as voice acting goes would be David Accord as the ship captain / rabbit droid, and Phil Lamar as Orn Frita himself.
Very nice.
So, before we get into thumbs up, thumbs down, I looked up what these two ships are, these two being the Coronet, which is the one in this episode. This is manufactured by the Kalevala Spaceworks and is a custom space liner, a luxury space liner, yacht type ship. Okay? The ship that's in Solo, A Star Wars Story, is a Kavalian star yacht. So they're made by the same shipyard, same type of ship. It's like a luxury yacht slash spaceship cruiser. That was a lot of S's in there. And one, I was not correct. They don't look super similar. I mean, they've got like the elongated design. One kind of has what looks like more of the entertainment slash passenger accoutrements near the top, whereas the other one is like more near the bottom.
Okay.
But, you know, if you took one, like, flipped it upside down, they would look similar. But, yeah, they're skinny and tall and basically space yachts made by the same company.
Cool. Yeah.
So there you go. So I did have a reason to associate these two. I just didn't know what it was.
Right. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. And anything else you need to say about this episode before we just
Nope, that's it. I'm ready for rip and review, man.
Cool. You want to go first?
I will go first. I'll go first.
Go for it.
I give this one a thumbs up.
Cool.
And if I remember correctly, I gave last episode's a thumbs down, I think.
I honestly don't remember.
I don't remember either. But I think. And okay. So I brought up at the beginning of this episode that this was the production code on this was like 123. Here's what I think happened. I think this episode was made
right
sometime around when season 1 stuff was being developed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the storyline, okay, was put into production, and then somebody went, "This is really, really good." But this would have, if it would have came out in episode 1, this would have been the first introduction of Satine. It would have been the first introduction of this like coalition of neutral systems. That she's the head of these 1,500 systems, right? It would have been the first introduction of Merrick.
Right.
Right? So then I think later the Mandalore plot was made to kind of introduce Mandalore and this coalition of systems and Satine and like set us up to get us on this ship, which is exactly what the Mandalore plot did.
Right.
This episode is really good, and it makes that episode not as good. But then at the same time, when you do like a build up to Voyage of Temptation, right? things don't necessarily coincide 100%, and
Right.
because Obi-Wan and Satine have been interacting for the entire time that he was on Mandalore. But then when he walks into her little bed chamber with everybody around, that relationship is introduced as he hasn't seen her in a long time.
Right.
So it's just those little inconsistencies. Like, yeah, it's great to like later go back and like fill something in, or like pump the brakes on an episode and say, hey, we could do some other stuff with this, but you still have to rework that episode a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
they had a half a season or however long, right? It's not like they work on one episode and it's done, and they put that out, and they have a week, they work on this next one, and it's done, yada, yada, yada. But from initial beginning of production to when this episode came out, another story looks like it was slipped in before that to kind of fill some stuff out.
Yeah.
And whether or not last week I liked the Mandalore plot, I like it less this week.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the Mandalore plot, there are things in this episode that I like less. But judging this one on its own, I give it a solid thumbs up. It's good. It's really nice. It's a well-done episode, start to finish. There are some things that could be considered Easter eggs. You know, it's nice that Anakin is there to kind of interact with Obi-Wan on this relationship frustrating journey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The stuff with the clone troopers is, you know, I think they're necessary to be there to have like this monster aspect thing going on.
Yeah.
And those two, plot A and plot B, are melded together pretty well here. One, you know, plot B is necessary to keep what's going on in plot A have some relevance, I suppose, as to like why these things are happening, and vice versa.
Cool.
There you go.
I agree with you absolutely, actually. Yeah. Completely agree. This is a very entertaining episode. It's well done. I agree. Plot A, plot B are in service of one singular overarching plot. But really, yeah, at the end of the day, just on its own, I think this episode's just damn good. Yeah, this is definitely one of the stronger episodes of Clone Wars that I can think of in recent memory for sure. I also don't remember exactly how I felt when we did our recording on Mandalore plot. I don't remember anything terribly negative about it, but you know, I see. Yeah, I would have missed those details you caught on, but I see your hesitation or your reassessment of the two episodes now against each other. That doesn't bother me as much as it seems to, you know, at least weigh in your mind to some degree. But I do now see it, you know. But all the same, this episode is on its own just well done to me. Yeah.
And I think the reason that this stuff sticks out to me like this is because there's so many people involved with this, and everybody is doing their part, right? But there is at least a handful of people that are looking at this structure as a whole.
Right.
You know, and to have an episode where you have two characters interacting like the entire time, and they go on an adventure together, and at the end of that episode, you're like, oh shit, we need Anakin here. So he just like you were smart enough to do that, even though it was annoying. Like, hey, yo, I'm Anakin. I'm here to escort you guys back to Coruscant. You know, that was real awkward at the end of the Mandalore plot. Like, Anakin just pops in like, hey, I'm here. Let's get on the ship. But I get it because the next episode they're on the ship leaving the fucking planet. But then the first interaction with the two main characters of the last episode, they're acting like they haven't seen each other in forever. Because when it was originally written, that's probably the way that it was. Yeah. So there's sometimes I wish that they could just smooth some of this shit out a little bit. It's from episode to episode, it's hard enough to figure out where this stuff takes place when from one episode to the next it could be like immediate, and sometimes there's like a giant jump in time span. But I had the same thought process like back in the Brain Invader, somewhere around there. Landing at Point Rain. I don't remember exactly where, but it was Barasafi and Ahsoka, right? At the end of one episode, Rex is like, go get some R&R. Right. And then, like, they're in the next episode, like, in a scene, walking around or something. And then in the third episode, they're, like, coming back. So it was like, they were there, go for R&R, then they're back, then they're gone, then they're back. Mm-hmm. Like, just somebody fucking look at this shit. That's all I'm saying. That's my complaint.
I think, I understand completely. I think the only thing I can make in the show's case is maybe, like, they are slightly concerned about somebody catching it at some strange, like, Saturday afternoon where it's like they might catch Voyage of Temptation but not Mandalore plot, so they still have to kind of reestablish minor things.
I can agree with that. And I know that I'm oversimplifying, like, there should just be a couple of people that should just, like, smooth this stuff out. I know that's not the way it works.
Right.
But it's just jarring when you're looking at it from, I don't know. And I know a part of it is that I watch these episodes like 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I don't even know how many times.
Yeah, whereas, like, I watch it once and I move on. I watch it just once for each of these episodes. Yeah. And I don't go back.
We've got different viewing habits, and I'm okay with that.
But yeah, so that's why I'm saying, like, I don't mind these little reestablishment things.
Isn't that why they have, like, the newsreel, though? So that they can catch you up if need be? I mean, in the newsreel, it's like Obi-Wan and Satine just hung out for a long fucking time, and then it's like, hey, there's an assassination plot. I'm gonna go upstairs, and then Satine's like, I haven't seen you in a long time, you asshole.
Well, you have number one, I didn't get that explicit sense. Okay. Like, the sense I got in that room is that Obi-Wan is just teasing her, and she's just teasing him back. To me, it didn't read as they hadn't seen each other.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm reading into, like, the conversations that Anakin and Obi-Wan are having, and maybe I'm letting that bleed over into my opinion of their relationship together. I don't know. And
even then, like, the anxiety that I'm getting from from Obi-Wan there is just that, like, things got brought up in the last episode that Obi-Wan didn't expect to get brought up in terms of his internal feelings and emotions, right?
Okay.
That's kind of my sense there, too. There's nothing about the transition between these two episodes that I'm finding aren't that unsmooth to the sense that you seem to be seeing that. But also to me, I like the idea that, again, this episode is still self-contained. Like, yes, it depends on some information from the previous episode. And, we've had this discussion many times on this show before, but that, yes, there's the newsreel, but it's still good to kind of get a sense from Obi-Wan, hear it from Obi-Wan, his feelings on why he might be anxious, or Anakin kind of probing him, and that banter, just so we kind of see the character dynamic explicitly between Obi-Wan and Satine rather than getting it via newsreel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because then the payoff at the end of the episode makes a lot more sense rather than if we had skipped over a lot of that, because it's, again, this episode came out in 2010. Yeah, this predates like Netflix becoming as big as it is now.
For sure.
The idea of binge watching, wasn't quite a thing at that time yet. Like it was possible,
Disney properties weren't on Netflix anyway.
Right, exactly.
Except for maybe like Hannah Montana or something like that. But so I will say, while I said Disney properties, Star Wars wasn't a Disney property then, and Star Wars properties were not on streaming services.
Right.
So that wasn't an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like, your arguments they're valid.
Yeah, right.
I don't necessarily think that this episode depends on anything that happened in the last episode, and that's
not at all.
That's one of my qualms. But that's fine. This episode is good. Unfortunately, it makes the last episode less good.
Yeah.
Whether if I gave it a thumbs up last week, I would give it less of a thumbs up this week. If I gave it a thumbs down last week, I would give that one more of a thumbs down last week.
Yeah, it just shifts down a little bit.
It definitely made the last one not as good.
Yeah.
No matter what my opinion of it was.
Yep.
Next week, however, we have an episode titled Duchess of Mandalore. So I'm assuming that Satine is going to be back, and maybe we will see some more about her and or Obi-Wan. Maybe pre-Vizsla, I couldn't tell you. So that's what you guys should be looking forward to next week. In the meantime, if you want to let me know how wrong I am on judging this episode or last week's episode, or want to school me on why certain pieces of anatomy are framed certain ways throughout the Voyage of Temptation. Maybe that's what the temptation was. Not really sure. Anyway, reach out to me on Twitter at NotTheNerds. You can reach out to Lorenzo on Facebook at Not the Nerds Podcast. Shouts out to Lindsay over at Strange Fantasy Music at gmail.com. Thank you to her for putting together our intro-outro music. Shouts out to Kevin Warren as well for doing our hero pose and some other miscellaneous podcasting artwork that we have asked him to do. Check him out on Twitter at They Call Me KDub.
You forgot to mention our email, which is at notthenerdspodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
Other than that, we are also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play,
TuneIn Radio,
and also YouTube.
Yeah,
so
YouTube.
Yeah. So any of those locations, just give us a comment for any of this as well. That's another way to reach us. And as always, like and subscribe if possible. So, yeah.
It's the week before Christmas, so be nice to each other.
Yeah, please. Please. And if you're in the Midwest, hopefully the weather's being somewhat reasonable. So
we will see. So
right.
We got about a week till Christmas. So we're in the beginning of winter officially, and probably the middle of winter as far as the weather goes. So we'll see how that goes. But again, next week is the Duchess of Mandalore, and until then, I've been Kevin Hord.
Lorenzo Phan here.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.